All right, how's it going, everyone? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Let us know in the comments who you are and where you're tuning in from. And I'll quickly check if the notification has gone out. I'm here with my friends Vyvy and James. We're going to be talking about the challenges of recruiting during a pandemic. So I'm just going to give it a few minutes for you folks to start tuning in. But let us know in the comments who you are, where you're working at if you're a recruiter, and what are your challenges right now that you're experiencing? And we're gonna get this thing started shortly. But Vyvy, James, really nice to have both of you on with me for this session. Was really looking forward to it. And
Thanks
thank
for
you.
bringing us
Yeah,
aboard.
of course. Thanks, Dean.
No worries, no worries. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Obviously the weather is less than ideal, but making the most out of it for sure.
Right, right. Awesome, awesome, fantastic. Vyvy, how about yourself?
Pretty good. Despite the pandemic kind of floating around, things are looking up, and really looking forward to at least having some virtual interactions with everyone.
Yeah, that's great, right? I mean, that's the new environment we're in. Everything's virtual now. So, and that is part of what we're going to be discussing today, folks. So, again, if you're a recruiter, let us know in the comments who you are, whether you're agency, whether you're corporate. We're not going to discriminate or anything of that sort. So, let us know which side of the table you're on for sure. Let us know in the comments. So, Vivi, so we'll get into the introductions shortly, actually, but I'll just give it a few more minutes for people to start tuning in and commenting. I know that StreamYard usually does have a bit of a lag here, so let's give it a few more minutes.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
definitely introduce yourself in the comments, folks. And what we're going to be covering today actually is how recruitment has changed. We're going to be talking about what are the new challenges that recruiters are facing in the recruitment cycle, right? We're going to be talking about the market. There are certain market challenges, obviously, with market saturation, a lot of available talent that's on the market. And we're going to be talking about certain trends and statistics in relation to how things are right now, so that all of you watching and tuning in can take that away and use that and utilize that in your own recruitment processes and cycles and all of that. So without further ado, I guess let's get this started. And for those of you tuning in, thanks so much for tuning in. Don't be shy. Let us know in the comments who you are and where you're tuning in from. So if this is your first time tuning in and following me, my name is Dean Kuluera. So I'm a IT recruiter turned IT job search coach. So I'm a former recruiter, but I'm very passionate about recruitment. So I definitely was very excited in having this conversation. And I've primarily been on the staffing agency side of the equation and exclusively recruiting for IT positions and IT opportunities. So that's just a bit about myself. And again, thanks everyone for joining in. Vyvy, James, would you both definitely introduce yourself and let everyone know a bit about yourselves?
Yeah, for sure. Vivi, go ahead.
Sure. So, hello, everyone. My name is Vyvy. I am working as a senior recruiter for Intuit Canada. I am based in downtown Toronto, and majority of my roles are primarily focused within our Mississauga office or GTA office and Edmonton. But from an Intuit perspective, we are globally recruiting for majority software development roles. For myself, I've been in recruiting for about 5 years as of right now. Initially started off as, agency recruiting for about 4 years. And then I finally stepped out of agency and started working corporate recruiting as of the past year and a half.
Awesome, awesome. James?
Yeah. So my name is James Phanyasaeng, and I actually started recruiting about 6 years ago in 2014, and I've been deep into the agency world and to 3 different agencies now, and I'm currently the head of recruitment at Core Resources. And funny enough, I actually worked with Vyvy in the past at Core Resources. And we enjoyed working with each other so much that we decided to start our own kind of group called Talent TO, where recruiters from the GTA can actually connect and network and give each other the best practices and also help each other out even to find jobs. So that's something that we started during the beginning of the pandemic, because as we'll get into, there's been a lot of challenges when it came to the beginning of the pandemic when it came to recruiters. So we wanted to bring a group in to help those individuals out and each other.
Awesome, fantastic, and yeah, folks, just a heads up, Talentio is a fantastic group. They had a great session that I attended, and they brought in some great speakers. So it's a great group, especially for those of you in recruitment. Feel free to reach out to James and Vyvy for more information on joining and how you can get involved. It's a great community. So with that being said, guys, let's just we do have a few comments here, so just some shout outs. We got Saurabh here all the way from India tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, Saurabh. He's looking to learn more about things from the recruiting experts. Tarun here from thanks for tuning in, Tarun. And he's giving a shout out to everyone here. We got Simmerpreet as well. Good afternoon, Simmerpreet. Thanks so much for tuning in. And we got Shraddha as well, who's wanted to thank us for hosting the event. Hey, no worries, Shraddha. Good to see you here. So let's get this thing started. So firstly, I mean, obviously things have really changed, right? I mean, since the advent of COVID-19 and everyone's moved to remote and no more handshakes and all that stuff, right? But Vyvy and James, like you guys are in the recruitment industry. Like, how has recruitment changed? Let's I guess kick things off from there.
Perfect. Vyvy, do you want to start off?
Sure. So I think with the pandemic happening closer to, when quarantine happened between March and April, you saw a drastic drops in hiring requisitions. And I'm sure you saw that from an agency perspective, right? You have all these companies putting on pause a lot of their roles, unsure of what the climate was going to be like with people working from home, or a drop in business or revenues in general. So I think it was really difficult for everyone from a recruitment standpoint as well as an applicant standpoint to really find a new job, or if you were out of a job, to even find something on a full-time perm or contract basis. So I think the first couple months was pretty difficult to even find a job or find companies that were hiring. But as we slowly progressed and everyone was slowly moving into a virtual or remote work environment, it opened up the doors. And I don't know about for you, James, but I believe just the market in general, it's shot right back up, especially in the tech world, within the past couple months. So if anyone is looking for work, I think this would be the best time to start applying.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that was definitely very good points. And yeah, at the beginning of the pandemic, I think a lot of it just was a lot of fear and a lot of companies not wanting to hire new people because of the unknown of what the future was going to hold. So I think that made the huge drop in people and companies and employers hiring more people. So the employment just skyrocketed from February all the way until it looks like July. So it went from 5% unemployment to 14.8%. Wow. But now it's going down since July, which is really good. It's currently at 13% now. So we are seeing, it definitely skyrocketed. A lot of unemployment, but now we're seeing an increase, which is really good. I guess the biggest transition was for recruiters, at least, transitioning from being in the office and then recruiting remotely, because most of the time recruiters are going to be in an environment where if you're in an agency, you're working with salespeople and account managers and interacting with people internally all the time. And if you're a talent acquisition, you have to speak with other people who are within the organization, the hiring managers, and having those collaborative kind of discussions. So how do you bring that type of interaction and collaboration online and remotely? So, I think that's one of the biggest things that was a huge challenge. And I know from personal experience, because we were a smaller organization, we were able to, find the technology, make sure that everyone had the right laptops and monitors, and make sure that your internet speed isn't 20 megabytes per second, and and even having the separation of your office from your personal space. So having that transition period, I think for bigger companies was very difficult and slow. But once you were able to kind of come up with a good game plan and a good setup at home, and then Zoom obviously I wish I invested in Zoom.
I know. Yeah, seriously.
that stock just skyrocketed, and it delved into a whole new type of technology industry, whereas more video communications that was needed. So Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts. So, and you utilizing that in order to stay connected with everyone within your organization.
Yeah. Great points. Great points from both of you guys, actually. Yeah, I mean, when the pandemic first hit, I was still recruiting at the time, and something that I noticed obviously was that when this first happened, it was simply businesses simply trying to adapt to the situation, right? So recruitment didn't really become like a major priority, and I think recruitment was put on hold while businesses figured out, hey, how do we get through this? How do we keep operating? And how do we adapt? And obviously that in itself has resulted in a lot of technology transformation projects going on as well, right? Simply because a lot of businesses do not have the infrastructure in place to have their employees work remotely, and then of course securing everything, because people working from home and all of that. Now, would both of you say that this is now kind of is that part already done now? Are most organizations now operating fine in this new environment, and is that why now things are kind of getting back to normal at least, and people are starting those recruitment demands are starting to increase again?
Yeah, I think with the gap between the time where businesses were adapting to remote work, from a corporate perspective per se, is that between that time, the hardest transition for us was translating what type of culture or what type of environment you had in office, and translating that to a virtual experience, right? So I think a lot of companies with Intuit, we had a great in-office culture. I actually don't know. This is all I hear because I was a COVID hire.
Oh,
so everything was onboarded virtually. Yeah, but with regards to the transition between really understanding how to collaborate with everyone, how to get everyone involved and feel like they're still with the team during COVID and working from home, I think that was probably the biggest challenge. And then once you have that translation, then you can focus a little bit more in terms of what areas of the business are seeing less revenue, working on that, and then you slowly start going back to the recruitment process. So right now, I think it's been doing well. Like, we are pretty busy on our end in terms of recruiting. How is it on the agency side, James?
Yeah, so now during the agency side, we're seeing a huge spike in regards to especially IT jobs that are available at the moment, and it's starting to normalize for sure. I think I work a lot with the big banks and also the government as well, and they're actually investing a lot of money into future technology projects. And now that they've are able to do remote onboarding, setting a laptop and setting packages and handbooks, virtually, once they were able to figure that out and figure out, what business needs that they can, accomplish, that's going to be pandemic proof. One of the good examples is, for the government, Doug Ford announced that the digitizing the application for driver's license.
Yeah.
That's going to be something that is going to be needed in the future, and it's going to be pandemic proof. So, finding those business opportunities within organizations, it's going to be super key. And we see that happening at banks now, more, mortgages online, and, banking online, and, government projects as well. So, once companies are discovering, projects that they can do online, and be focused on that, they're going to be hiring more people within the tech industry. So that's the uptick that we're seeing right now.
Awesome. Fantastic. So just a fefew shout outs here. We got Khatija tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, Khatija. We got Vinay in the house. Will, I guess this is someone both of you know. Will says James and V are some of the best in the industry. Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We got Mustafa. How's it going, Mustafa? Asha says, hey guys, good time to talk about this. We'll get in touch with you soon. Sounds good, Asha. We got Ahil here. He says staffing companies are having openings but not receiving any interviews. Yeah, so Ahil, hang on to that question. We're going to get around to your question shortly. And we got Gurpreet in the house. Hey, Gurpreet, nice to see you here. Thanks for tuning in. Now, I have a question for you, Vyvy, because you mentioned something pretty interesting about culture, right? Now, I myself have never worked in corporate recruitment. I've always been agency in the past, but this made me think, like, how do you communicate that culture? Like, if you're not going to be in the office, you're not going to be really interacting with people, face to face and stuff like that. And I guess not just for corporate, but even yourself, James. Feel free to share your thoughts as well. How does the agency communicate their client's culture when the agency themselves might not be actually going in, unless it's a long established relationship, obviously, and you were able to establish that before COVID? But how do you communicate the culture aspect? Like, especially yourself, Vyvy, you were hired during the pandemic. So how do you get that grasp of, okay, this is the culture, and how do you sell that to potential candidates?
I think it does take a little bit of time. Like my ramp up period was a couple weeks, if not maybe a couple months.
Okay.
And it was just understanding the types of interactions that I had with everyone that I interacted with, from people directly within the talent acquisition team to stakeholders or possible stakeholders that I would work with in the future. I think a big translation of that from my point of view was seeing what or how the process was at the interview stage. The way that recruiters are able to handle the process, the timeliness, the way that they structure the interview itself is a really good indication as to how they're able to treat their employees, especially the way that if you're treated as a candidate, right? So
Yeah.
I had a really great interview experience. My manager was outstanding in terms of being so timely, coming back to me with feedback and really being adamant about like what the process was. There were no surprises whatsoever. The interview process itself was pretty challenging. And, once I was actually into the role, it was the interactions that I had with people from talent acquisition, from software development, from product management, or immigration, that really kind of gave me a good indication of like how people worked. I never felt like I was sitting on the sidelines, even though I've never really physically met anyone from the company.
Right.
I've had people Slack me endlessly saying, like, welcome to the team. Like, this is where I'm from. This is the team that I work with. If you have any questions pertaining to this, like, ask me. Or if I don't know the answer, I'll forward you to this person. So it was just, it was very welcoming. I think a lot of the individuals that I've worked with are, they're extremely empathetic individuals, and that they can understand from my perspective that, yes, she's coming from the outside. She's never met anybody before. Let's make her feel welcomed. And I'd like to think that that's translated from a company-wide perspective.
Awesome. Very, very interesting. James, any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, culture, I think, is a huge thing. And then, like you were mentioning, especially from an agency perspective, how do you translate the culture that some of the companies you're working for to the candidate? I think for me, at least, or for our company, it's like you were mentioning, a lot of long-lasting relationships and just knowing the client and, even having experience with them pre-COVID helps with that. But I think, videos online, Instagrams of the company and company pages that can really describe a lot about a company's culture. And that's something that you can kind of relate to candidates. And as well, part of the interview process is, speaking directly with the hiring manager and kind of getting to know the culture from their perspective, because they're there. But even from an internal culture perspective here, at our company, it's trying to translate that culture that we had in person to online is especially becoming more and more challenging. We try to do virtual socials all the time, and some of the ideas we had were very creative. We did MTV Cribs, which
oh wow, interesting.
Yeah, each person in the organization would take their cell phone and kind of give us a tour of the house, just so sort of things like that you need to do in order to, engage people within your organization. Because we just hired 2 new people. So we want to make sure that they feel welcome. Like, Vyvy was mentioning, you have to be empathetic in terms of people's situation. And just because they were hired virtually doesn't mean they're any less of an employee. So you got to make sure that they feel welcome and part of the team.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Clearly, everyone has to make some certain adaptations, right? But I really like that MTV Cribs thing. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So let's see if we can maybe answer a few questions here before I move on to the next topic. So let's go back to Ahil. So Ahil said, staffing companies are having openings, but I'm not receiving any interviews. I mean, obviously there's a lot of competition right now. I would assume that might be the issue. But yeah, if you both of you can kind of share your thoughts on that, like any tips for Ahil on how to stand out, not just from staffing agencies, but even for yourself, Vyvy, like as a corporate recruiter as well. How do you stand out to the recruiter?
James, if you want to address it first
Yeah.
from the staffing
Yeah.
perspective.
I'll start off with the staffing agency perspective. So I think it is a case-by-case situation in regards to the clients and openings, because our organization is seeing a lot of interviews and placements, but I can understand having a lot of openings. It's mostly due to market saturation, and I think that's something that we discussed earlier before this podcast, is that there's a lot more candidates in the market and less positions. It's because it's a psychology term, it's the paradox of choice. Sometimes when people have too many options, it's harder to make a decision, and you need to make sure that your candidates are standing out as much as possible. So people are having higher standards in regards to hiring managers, and they are looking for the best out of the best, rather than before where they had less choices. They would be doing more interviews. So that would be from my perspective, at least.
I think from a corporate standpoint, what I would advise is, if you have really great connections within your network, reach out to your connections. We pride ourselves in a lot of the referrals that we get provided with our employees. So if you know people working in a company and they work within your working capabilities, have them reach out to the hiring manager and personally provide a referral. I think that would probably be your best bet in terms of finding something, or at least getting interviews. Standing out is just making sure that you have everything necessary on your LinkedIn. On your resume, you want to be consistent with the information that you're providing. I would advise talking a little bit more about your achievements versus just day-to-day responsibilities, and kind of quantifying your experience and letting recruiters know exactly what you've done within your past roles.
Great advice. And yeah, just to kind of add on that as well, like on average, and I've done some research on this, like every job posting gets like on average like between 200 to 300 applications or something like that.
Yeah.
So and just to kind of give everyone kind of a peek into how the recruitment process works, we're not going to be reaching out to all 200 of those applications, obviously, right? I mean, we're going to be conducting a search, and then we're probably going to reach out to maybe like 10, 15 people at most, 10, 15, 20 maybe. And then of those 10, 15, 20, we're going to be presenting 4 or 5 for the position. So I think James and Vyvy, you both gave some great suggestions on things you got to do outside of simply applying, because that's how you get lost amongst the mix of all these hundreds and hundreds of applications. So great advice there, right? So I hope that answers your question, Ahil. That's a great question. So we got a question here from Amy Duffy. So Amy, shout out to Amy. Thanks for tuning in. So Amy says, what's the best use of recruiters' time when there's no recruiting to be done due to hiring freezes? So yeah, if you guys can share your thoughts on that.
I can start this one off. So the best thing to do is to pipeline. If you are familiar with the types of roles that your company hires on an annual basis, start pipelining. I think it's a great opportunity to start sourcing, learn how to source, learn how to do some data scraping. That's something that I want to be able to kind of take on as a recruiter. But go out, create relationships with great candidates, because as a recruiter, you start conversations with individuals. You have the time to really talk to them about your company. What are some of the things that they might be proposing in the future? And that as you build that relationship, you're less inclined to have a declined offer if you get to the offer stage when you have something open, because you've had such a great relationship with candidates. So it's always good to put like a goal up there. And if you want to start a relationship with 5 really great people for potential roles that that your company will be hiring in the future, go ahead and do that and start reaching out on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I actually, I was just gonna say the same point as Vyvy. It really is about passive recruitment and pipelining. That's actually one of the things that people don't do enough because of, there's so many jobs out there from pre-COVID. But yeah, doing hiring freezes and when unemployment's so high, it's all about pipelining at the end of the day. And I did a little bit of research on this as well. LinkedIn just put out a job report for the top emerging jobs in the IT field. It states that tech is going to be king, within the next 10 years, and a lot of the jobs out there. Look at the top jobs and start pipelining those ones. If you're from an agency perspective, right now the number one job is artificial intelligence specialist, and then number 3 is data engineer. Data is going to be king in the future, and artificial intelligence and machine learning is going to help manipulate and utilize that data. So being able to pipeline for the most in-demand jobs in Canada is definitely going to help you, for future resource planning. So I definitely agree from Vyvy's perspective. And also, if you are from a corporate kind of standpoint, you can work on the company's brand, the employer brand, and marketing from that perspective, making sure that the candidate experience is good as well, and refining your onboarding, all those type of processes. So that could also be an option for use of your time.
Yeah, and another thing to add on is, if you're a recruiter, especially from a corporate perspective or even an agency, is to review your interview process. Is it efficient? Are you spending too much time, let's say sourcing? Is the hiring manager taking too long to get back to you? Are there too many interview steps in the process itself? Are you losing out great candidates because of that? I think it's a great opportunity for you to review exactly what your processes are. Understand whether or not it's sufficient, if it goes against the market, and if it has worked for you. Because since you're going to be sitting around pipelining, it's also a great opportunity to work with your stakeholders, your hiring managers, and really refining that process so that you're eliminating the risk of people taking on other offers when you are recruiting.
Yeah, totally agree with you guys. I mean, pipelining is, and especially when you're on the agency side, right? I mean, that's pretty much like part of what we have to do on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. Definitely pipeline. And another suggestion I wanted to provide you with, Amy, is now might be also a good time for you to start developing your own brand as a recruiter as well, right? Using LinkedIn, because there's a lot of top tier talent out there right now that's actively on the market, and you can kind of use that as one of your ways of pipelining as well. So if right now, obviously, there's a lot of people that are struggling in their job search. You can start posting stuff, from a recruiter's standpoint, from a recruiter's perspective, and share that knowledge that you have as someone on the inside, right, involved in these recruitment cycles, and help build your own brand. And again, that just attracts more of that talent that you can ultimately connect with your clients. So I hope that helps, Amy. And we have some great advice there from James and Vyvy. So kind of moving ahead with some of the other questions that I had for both of you is, obviously there's a lot of market saturation, right? So there's a lot of talent. So how does the recruiter navigate this? Like how are you selecting, who you want to move ahead with, who you don't want to move ahead with? I mean, there's obviously so many applications coming in. What are both of you doing to kind of handle this situation? And what can the other recruiters out there that are experiencing this market saturation, like what can they do?
Yeah, no, I can definitely speak on that first in regards to the agency perspective. So what we had been doing, when there was not too many jobs out there and we had a lot of candidates, how do you distinguish between who the top candidate would be? One of the biggest things that we actually, decided to do is to conduct references for each candidate. So, being able to get 1 or 2 references from the most recent jobs can really help differentiate someone that doesn't have references. So I would say from a candidate, for advice for them is making sure that you have 4 to 5 really good references from your past employers that you're able to provide to recruiters, and in that way it can really differentiate yourself and help you kind of stand out from the market.
And I think to go back from my point is, at least from a corporate perspective, is that referrals are probably the first applications that you go through, right? You have employees from your respective companies. They are willing to vouch for individuals for certain roles. And obviously we want to handle that with care as recruiters, and just ensure that they have the best candidate experience. So I'd probably say referrals would be the first to kind of go forward with. If, let's say, your company isn't as well known to put in referrals, at the like when you start the recruitment process and you're synced up with your manager and talking about the roles, let them know, like, work with marketing in terms of letting their networks know that they're hiring for their team. One thing that I always kind of speak to in terms of my hiring managers is that with the interview teams and with the hiring managers, once I have that role posted on LinkedIn or posted on our careers website, post it on your LinkedIn, because my network might more be, let's say, recruiters or some software developers for a certain stack. But for the hiring managers for their own teams, put it out there, put it on your LinkedIn, share it so that you can have a better scope in terms of the market. And usually those are the first couple candidates that we look at. Alternative is that, like, yes, like, we do get 300, 400, 500 applications for certain roles. And I don't know about other companies, but it is a manual process for most, and you're literally sifting through resumes. And it is true, like, I usually take anywhere between like 6 to 10 seconds to skim through a resume, see what type of companies they work with, what type of positions they hold, what are some of the achievements, what are some of the projects that they're taking on. And if it's something that's worth a conversation, then yeah, I'll reach out and schedule a phone interview. Other times, you know, I think one of the biggest struggles for recruiters is that, yes, you have an influx of applicants coming in through your ATS or applicant tracking system, but half the time you don't get the quality there in terms of the skill sets that you're looking for. So majority of your responsibilities, you got to go out, you go on LinkedIn, GitHub, Stack Overflow, whatever necessary to really source for candidates. And I think that speaks to any potential individuals who are looking for work on this podcast, is to keep your LinkedIn up to date and ensure that you're highlighting as much as you can in terms of your work experience. Let LinkedIn do the work for you. Most of the time, recruiters will reach out to people on LinkedIn saying, hey, your profile looks good. This is the role that I might have. Let's have a conversation.
Great advice there. Great advice. So we have another question here from, I guess this is more so from a, I guess Strata is a recruiter, I'm guessing, but so Strata says, those who are in stable jobs are not wanting to take a risk right now. Poaching has become slightly tough. Culture would be one of the poaching cards. However, I find that candidates prefer stable jobs. So yeah, I guess Strata is talking about going after the passive candidate market here, which is, by the way, as a recruiter, one of my favorite markets, you know, to go after as a recruiter. But obviously, she just brings up some good points, right? Especially right now, things are a little bit, I mean, things are getting better, right? But maybe there's some uncertainty regarding the marketplace and stability and things like that. So a lot of candidates, they're like, hey, you know, it sounds like a great opportunity, but I just want to stay where I'm at. I'm not really looking for a move right now. How do you deal with those conversations? Like, how can the recruiter see if they can at least, you know, convince the candidate to take the conversation a bit further?
Yeah, I can start with that. So, you know, I will say it has actually been quite the challenge because candidates who are, you know, in a stable job, they don't want to take the risk because of the pandemic and the uncertainty. So, you know, it's a conversation that you have, and knowing as much as possible about your employer or the client that you're working with, knowing exactly, you know, where the financials and the stability and the future outlook. I think it definitely helps. You know, when I speak on behalf of my clients, I make sure that I know what projects they're working on, why they have the job available, and why it's going to be stable for the future. So, you know, knowing that information about your employer or client, I think is going to be very key, because you're right, without that information, it's just going to be more uncertainty. And why would a candidate even consider a job if it's going to be uncertain for the future? So.
Yeah, great points, James. And I think, yeah, but to kind of add on to that is just really understanding, you know, how did your company do in terms of revenue during COVID? How did they do prior to COVID? What are the reasons why, let's say, a hiring manager is looking for a particular role? And tell me if I'm wrong, but from a contract perspective, you know, you have a set contract because the team knows exactly what is needed to be done, or achieved within that contract duration. I think from a corporate perspective, if you're looking for full-time permanent employees, it's also just as important to understand why a role is open. What is the goal of that role in the long term, and being able to translate that to candidates. I try not to be too pushy, to be honest. Like, let's say as a recruiter myself, I think the last thing I'd want to do is to push someone into an uncomfortable conversation where if they really don't want to move, I'm not going to make them move. But it's really just putting on a selling cap and giving them really great aspects of the company. What are some of the things that they've done? What has been adjusted with COVID? And I think a lot of my conversations has been, how have we tackled COVID as a whole, as a company? And how does that look for the company in the long term? And just as long as you have those open conversations with candidates, I think the more of a relationship that you build off with them becomes stronger, the more they may be more susceptible to at least entertaining a new role.
Yeah, guys, great advice there. Totally agree. And just another thing I wanted to add, Shraddha, and this is something I used to do as a recruiter as well, because when you're talking to the passive candidate who doesn't want to move, something I do is I actually, at least at the initial stages of the conversation, I would take the pressure away from them, us expecting them to make a decision up front. So, I let them know, hey, look, we're not expecting you to make any kind of a decision at this point, but would you be open to at least having a conversation to further explore whether this might be a right career progression opportunity for you? And when you have all the information you need, you can, of course, decide for yourself if this is a stable position, just like James said, which is very important for them to figure out, and kind of take it from there. So I would suggest also, take the pressure off of them having to make a decision up front, and just put the focus more so on, hey, this is an exploratory conversation, so you can learn more and see if it makes sense for you. But great question there, Shraddha, and thanks for that question. We got a comment here from Bilal. Bilal says, be good with your existing clients. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I would definitely say that's the case, right? What do you guys have to say about that?
Yeah, they are the most important thing. I think it's a lot of the things that we talked about really echoes. In regards to recruitment, it really is all about networks and relationships. Vyvy mentioned referrals, I mentioned references, I mentioned, making sure to differentiate yourself. It's all about who you know, and it's all about, keeping and maintaining those relationships, whether it's with candidates, whether it's clients, hiring managers, what have you.
For sure. And you've already built that trust, whether it's existing clients or with existing stakeholders. You already built that trust. Like it takes so much longer for you to be able to build a relationship with someone that you've never worked with before versus someone that you've already worked with. They know exactly how you work, what the process is, and it's much easier to kind of flow with the people that you've had an existing relationship.
Got it. Fantastic. Yeah, totally agree with you guys. And yeah, Bilal, great observation there. So we have a question here, guys, from, I guess this is from a candidate perspective, but shout out to Khatija. So Khatija, thanks for tuning in. So Khatija says, question for recruiters: is it okay to connect with a recruiter and hiring manager of an open job position? For me, it's okay, as in this competitive job market, it makes candidates stand out with the customized communication. I'm hearing conflicting HR replies like this move is unethical on this question. So putting it up here, what would you suggest? So actually, that's a great question, because actually this is something, and James, Vyvy, let me know if you disagree with this. This is something I actually advise people to do is, hey, reach out directly to the HR people, the recruiters, or the hiring managers, to kind of stand out. But what are your thoughts about that? Is that unethical, like Khatija is saying, or is it something that should not be done? Like, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it really depends on the recruiter.
Totally.
Yeah, like some people, yes. Like if you, let's say if you're a recruiter having to go through multiple, like hundreds of applications within a system, and you have someone emailing you saying like, hey, this is the role that I'm interested in, this is my resume, this is the reason why I'm a good fit, I think it works out well. But I think, to be quite honest with you, like from a recruitment standpoint, there are a lot of emails that recruiters get, especially a lot of hiring managers that they get that might not even be pertaining to, let's say, recruitment for hiring manager, and they'll just pass it off and they'll just put it in their delete folder, right? Because I want to be honest, like hiring managers, maybe perhaps not. Maybe if you connect with them personally on LinkedIn without sending a proper email, because they probably get a couple hundred emails a day. I think it would be much more advisable to at least connect with the recruiter or understand which recruiters are responsible for what roles. Connect with them or send them a quick email, or at least just send the hiring manager a connection request.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Vyvy. Connection, I think, is okay. Messages or emails to the hiring manager, it's a bit of a gray area. Just based off of my own personal experience. So I would always err on a side of caution if you are conflicted from hearing different replies. But I don't connection alone never hurts ever.
Yeah, yeah. And also heads up, folks, if you're a job seeker, look, if you're being represented by an agency, you should never bypass the agency and go trying to go direct with the hiring manager. That's going to ruin your relationship with the agency. The agency might blacklist you, and it's just going to, it's not going to make you look good for the client either. So if you're being represented by an agency, that is your point of contact, and they will coordinate that communication, right? And same thing with corporate, right? If your point of contact is a corporate recruiter, I mean, you buy and there's an established contact, an established relationship, and an established communication cycle there. You bypassing the corporate recruiter is not going to really help you. Like it's not going to reflect well on you, and it's just going to again spoil that relationship you have with your point of contact as well, right? So just a heads up for all the job seekers out there, just keep that in mind. So Khatija, great question. Hope that helps. Amy says that's amazing. Thank you. Hey, no worries, Amy. That was a great question you had. I guess we have time for one more question. I know I've kept you guys here for about 40 minutes, but really appreciate your time. But let me see if I can get just one more question here. So Saurabh says, how to know if your application passed through an ATS and whether it reached a human being or not? What is the ideal time that we should follow up post applying for the role? You guys have any thoughts to share about that? I guess if Saurabh applies and his resume is in your database, should he be following up, or how often or how soon should he be following up to see if you might be interested in him?
I think it really depends on the company. I know there are some companies out there who are putting up job postings as a passive thing to start pipelining. They may not necessarily have an opening. Hence, you might not even hear anything at all, at least until they actively look for a role. Other times, let's say, for example, reflective of how we work is once we have something approved from the company and that we post it up, I'd probably say that if you're within the top 25 in terms of the top applications, you would hear within like a week or two at most if there's a high influx or high volume of applications. Now, in terms of follow-up, feel free. Like, it doesn't hurt to follow up at all. Like I said, it kind of sticks you out of the 100-odd resumes out there. Whether or not a recruiter gets back to you, it really does come down to the recruiter and how they view the candidate experience.
Yeah. And for me, I would say it is all about establishing that relationship with that recruiter. First and foremost, confirming in regards to a submission is definitely very important. And you can always establish, what the follow-up policy or the timelines would be. How long is this process going to be taking? When is it okay for me to follow up? You ask these questions to the recruiters, I guarantee you they'll be able to give you an answer. It's like, oh, you can follow up with me by end of this week if I don't have anything for you, or by next week, or they'll give you specific timelines on when you can follow up. I would recommend following up 2 hours after, or immediately 4 times in a row. That might annoy the recruiter. But if you are able to establish those timelines and with the recruiter themselves and follow that process, it'll really establish a good amount of trust between the candidate and the recruiter.
Awesome. Great thoughts there. So yeah, Saurabh, hope that helps, and all the best to you in your job search. We got some feedback. Shraddha says, great insights, James, V, and Dean. Much learning from me. Thank you again. No worries, Shraddha. And Khatija says, yes, this helps. Thank you, Dean and team. Hey, no worries, Khatija. Great question here. So, folks, I'm going to wrap it up from here. But, before we leave, James, Vyvy, do you want to let everyone know more about Talent TO and, for the recruiters out there who might be interested in joining or want more information about that?
Yeah, for sure. So, we are on LinkedIn, Meetups, and Slack, Talent TO. You can look us up, or you can just, find us from me or Vyvy's LinkedIn. We have over 200 recruiters in talent acquisition. And we'll be putting out events once monthly to kind of help share best practices and just start networking with each other and helping each other out.
Awesome, fantastic. And before we go, also for the job seekers out there, most of my viewers are IT professionals. What are both of you working on right now on the recruitment side that you're looking for candidates? Feel free to talk about any active positions you have that might be of interest to some of the job seekers, the IT professionals watching this here in Toronto.
For sure. I think one big aspect that people tend to overlook, and COVID has really created an environment for it, is that everything is remote work. A lot of companies are opening up their opportunities for people to work remotely. So let's say if you're sitting in one particular city and that you have always worked in that city, try a different state, try a different province, because there are companies out there who are looking to hire people on a remote basis. As from an Intuit perspective, I am looking for senior staff software developers, tech stack, ideally full stack. Anything in terms of programming language, we're pretty open, to be honest. We have so many different teams that are hiring that we're open to any tech stack, really. Looking for senior product designers, design managers. I'm looking for a BSA on a seasonal basis, a senior project manager on a seasonal basis. And like I said, most of these roles are going to be remote. So please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, James, you might want to prospect into that account.
For myself, I'm looking for data engineers. I'm looking for Salesforce developers, and something that's been really hard, I guess, for organizations, React.js, front-end development, has definitely been hot, very hot in demand. So if you have any of those three skill sets, feel free to reach out to me as well.
Awesome, fantastic. And you both are open to new connections, or do you prefer people just follow you, or what's the best way for people to follow you, recruiters or IT professionals?
Yeah, LinkedIn for me. I'm a Lion, LinkedIn open networker, so
Right.
feel free to connect.
Yeah, LinkedIn as well. Just to give me a little context as to where we were able to connect. And if it's through Dean's podcast, then feel free just to connect with me, and I'm more than happy to start a conversation with you.
Yeah, folks, make sure you do the customized message, right? Like you got to give some context, because not everyone's going to just accept every connection request they get. So put some context, put a customized message, and Vyvy and James are obviously very open to connecting. So Vyvy, James, thanks so much for the time you spent with us. I know it's almost an hour, but you shared so much great information and perspective for recruiters and people on the recruitment side, and you also shared some great insights on the candidate side of the equation as well. So again, thanks so much to both of you for your time, folks. Let us know in the comments you found this session helpful. We're happy to do this again in the future. Let us know your feedback in the comments, and make sure you thank James and Vyvy for their time in today's session. So thanks, everyone. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. James, Vyvy, thanks again so much for your time today.
Thanks for having us, Dean.
All right. Take care, everyone.